What if everything you learned about civilization was wrong? What if Egypt wasn't the beginning? What if the first cities weren't built 5,000 years ago, but 15,000 years ago? And what if traces of that forgotten world are still hidden beneath the oceans, buried under ice, and scattered across the globe? Tonight we're exploring one of the most controversial ideas in archaeology, the possibility that humanity wasn't the first civilization. Here's what we've been taught. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans lived as hunter-gatherers, small, nomadic groups, moving with the seasons, surviving day to day. Then, around 12,000 years ago, everything changed. Agriculture emerged. People settled down. They built permanent homes. By 5,000 years ago, the first great civilizations rose. Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley, writing, mathematics, monumental architecture, the wheel, cities with thousands of people. This is the story in every textbook. The timeline is clear, linear, progressive. Hunter-gatherers, farmers, city builders, civilization. Simple, clean, logical. But what if part of the story is missing? What if there's a chapter that was lost? Let's go back 20,000 years ago. The last ice age. Massive glaciers covered much of North America and Europe. Ice sheets over a mile thick. The world was colder, drier, different. But here's what's critical. With all that water locked up in ice, sea levels were dramatically lower. 120 meters lower. That's nearly 400 feet. Entire coastlines that don't exist today were exposed. Vast plains stretched where oceans now roll. Britain was connected to Europe. Indonesia was one large landmass. Between Siberia and Alaska, a land bridge called Beringia allowed humans to migrate. But there's more, much more. The Persian Gulf was a fertile valley with rivers running through it. The North Sea was dry land. Around Southeast Asia, an entire continent called Sundaland connected islands that are now separated by deep ocean. These weren't small areas. We're talking about millions of square kilometers of land that are now underwater. So here's the question that keeps some researchers awake at night. If humans were living on these coastlines and the sea levels rose dramatically, could ancient settlements now be underwater? Could entire cities lie buried beneath the waves, waiting to be discovered? Off the coast of Japan, something strange lies beneath the waves. The Yonaguni Monument, a massive underwater formation with what appear to be steps, platforms, and straight edges carved into stone. Discovered in 1986 by a diving instructor, it's become one of archaeology's most debated mysteries. Some scientists say it's purely natural, sandstone that fractured along geometric lines, the ocean doing what the ocean does over thousands of years. Others point to the precision, the right angles, what looks like a carved face. They ask, could this be a structure built when sea levels were lower? A temple? A city? Now submerged? The truth? We don't know. And that's the problem with underwater archaeology. The evidence is difficult to access, easy to erode, hard to date. But Japan isn't the only place. Off the coast of India, near Dwarka, divers have found stone structures, pillars, and walls beneath the water. Ancient texts describe Dwarka as a magnificent city built by Lord Krishna that sank into the ocean. Some marine archaeologists have found pottery, inscriptions, and structural remains that date back thousands of years. Is this the legendary city, or just another coastal settlement that fell to rising seas? And in the Bahamas, the Bimini Road, a formation of rectangular stones that some say is a man-made road or wall. Others insist it's beach rock that naturally fractured. Here's what's important. We're not saying these are definitely proof of an ancient civilization. The evidence is ambiguous. The dating is controversial. The interpretations vary wildly, but they raise a fascinating possibility. What if some of these structures are remnants of coastal settlements that existed when sea levels were lower? Not a super civilization with advanced technology, but human communities living on coastlines that were swallowed by the ocean as the Ice Age ended. Communities whose stories were lost. Archaeologists found something that changed everything. Göbekli Tepe, built approximately 11,600 years ago. That's not a typo, 11,600 years ago. According to everything we thought we knew, the people who built this should have been simple hunter-gatherers, nomadic, primitive. But hunter-gatherers don't organize hundreds of workers to quarry, transport, and erect 20-ton stones. They don't create intricate carvings. They don't build monumental architecture that takes generations to complete. This site required planning, organization, skilled labor, leadership, a shared vision. Göbekli Tepe forced archaeologists to rewrite the timeline. Maybe agriculture didn't come first. Maybe people settled down to build temples and then developed farming to support the workers. Maybe civilization didn't progress in a straight line. The lead archaeologist who excavated Göbekli Tepe, Klaus Schmidt, spent his career studying this site, and it raised a question that haunts archaeology. If people could build something this sophisticated 11,600 years ago, what else haven't we found? What other sites are still buried? What other discoveries are waiting? Göbekli Tepe wasn't destroyed by time. It was deliberately buried around 8,000 BCE, carefully covered with earth, preserved. Why? We don't know. But its existence proves one thing beyond doubt. The past is stranger than we imagined. Here's something that's puzzled scholars for centuries. Cultures around the world tell the same story. A great flood, a catastrophe that wiped out humanity, a warning that came too late, a few survivors who rebuilt civilization. The Epic of Gilgamesh from ancient Mesopotamia describes how the gods decided to destroy humanity with a flood. One man, Utnapishtim, was warned. He built a boat. He survived. The book of Genesis tells of Noah. God saw the wickedness of humanity, sent a flood. Noah built an ark, saved his family and the animals. But it's not just the Middle East. Ancient Greece had Deucalion. Hindu texts describe Manu and the Great Fish. The Maya recorded floods that destroyed previous worlds. Aboriginal Australians tell of rising seas that drowned the land. Over 200 flood myths from cultures on every continent. Now, mainstream scholars say these are just stories, similar human experiences. Local floods exaggerated over time. Coincidence. But some researchers ask, what if these stories preserve a real memory? At the end of the last ice age, sea levels rose dramatically. Not overnight, but over centuries. Coastal settlements were abandoned. Land disappeared beneath the waves. To people living through it, it must have seemed like the world was ending. The sea was rising. Their homes were vanishing. Generation after generation, watching the shoreline retreat. Could these flood stories be the distant echo of that trauma? A collective memory passed down for thousands of years? We may never know for certain, but the fact that so many cultures tell similar stories, it's worth wondering. And then there's the Younger Dryas. Around 12,900 years ago, the Earth was warming. The Ice Age was ending. Glaciers were retreating. Then suddenly temperatures plummeted, back to near glacial conditions. For over 1,000 years, the cold returned. What caused it? Scientists debate this fiercely. Some propose a comet impact, a fragment of ice or rock hitting the North American ice sheet, causing massive flooding, triggering climate collapse. Others point to natural climate cycles, changes in ocean currents, the complex machinery of Earth's climate shifting unexpectedly. What we know is this: the Younger Dryas was real. It was dramatic. It coincided with the extinction of many large mammals, and it happened right around the time that Göbekli Tepe was being built. Some researchers have connected this to broader catastrophe theories. Could a comet impact have destroyed an early civilization? Could climate collapse have ended a culture we've forgotten? Here's where we need to be careful. The evidence for a comet impact is still debated. The idea that it destroyed an advanced civilization is speculative. Most archaeologists and scientists reject this. But the Younger Dryas itself, that's real. Documented, measured in ice cores and sediment layers around the world. It was a time of dramatic change, of environmental stress, of adaptation. Whether it destroyed a civilization or simply challenged the humans who lived through it, one thing is certain: the end of the Ice Age was not peaceful. It was not gradual. It was a time of upheaval. And upheaval leaves scars on the land, on the people, on the stories they tell their children. Let's do a thought experiment. Let's say there was a civilization 15,000 years ago, more advanced than we think, with cities, with technology, with culture. Why can't we find it? Imagine a modern city, New York, Tokyo, London. Now imagine it abandoned. After 100 years, vegetation reclaiming the streets, buildings crumbling, metal rusting, glass shattered. After 1,000 years, most structures collapsed. Only the sturdiest stone remaining. Everything else returned to Earth. After 10,000 years, almost nothing visible on the surface. Buried under soil, eroded by wind and water, scattered by earthquakes and volcanoes. Now add this: rising sea levels that swallow the coastlines where most humans prefer to live. Add glaciers that scrape the land clean in some places. Add 12,000 years of erosion, decay, and geological change. What would survive? Stone, maybe, if it was buried quickly, if it was massive, if it was lucky. Göbekli Tepe survived because it was deliberately buried, protected from the elements, preserved by accident. How many other sites are still out there? Buried under modern cities, under the ocean, under ice. The ocean floor is less explored than the surface of Mars. We've mapped maybe 20% of it in detail. What's down there? We find shipwrecks from just a few hundred years ago, completely encrusted, barely recognizable. How much harder is it to find something 10,000 years old? The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. Sometimes it's just really hard to find. So where does this leave us? What if archaeologists are right? What if there never was a forgotten super civilization with advanced technology? What if the timeline is basically correct? Even then, discoveries like Göbekli Tepe prove something remarkable. The deeper we dig into humanity's past, the stranger it becomes. We've only been doing serious archaeology for about 150 years. In that time, we found sites that overturned everything we thought we knew. How many more are waiting? History may not be wrong, but it may be far more complicated than we ever imagined. The story of humanity is not a straight line from primitive to advanced. It's messy, it's complex, it's full of surprises, and the greatest discovery might still be out there, waiting, buried, hidden, under the ocean, under the ice, under our feet. The past is not dead. It's not even past. It's still writing its story, and we're still reading it.